We kind of say to people, well, do you know what? We all appreciate that um, being kind is a really lovely thing to do, and being on the end of an act of kindness can often make our day. But those things are really true. But the reality of kindness and positivity, especially when combined, is that it has a million times more impact than we would ever believe it could do. And this is a lovely little example where somebody came through Starbucks drive-through and paid for the drink for the car behind them. And that's called a random act of kindness, and it's something that we're hearing more and more about. It's a lovely thing to do. And the surprising thing about that was this random act of kindness lasted for 150 cars before it stopped. So this is the concept about kindness is contagious, but it's more contagious than you could ever believe. Um, so yeah, 2.5 hours it lasted for, and the guys that were running the drive-through actually counted how long it lasted because they were into all that kind of positivity stuff. You know, it's all American, isn't it? So they're all into this kind of stuff, and it was 2.5 hours worth of customers who had their drinks paid for by one random act of kindness. So it's really, really contagious. It's fantastic. I think the other thing about that is, though, and I'm going to show you about the science, the little scientific reason for that. Um, but the reverse is true. So whilst kindness is highly contagious, being a mood hoover and putting people down and making people feel not good is as contagious. So it's just that little concept of be aware of your impact. Um, so hyperdyadic spread is um, it's a fantastic concept. It's something me and Nikki talk about a lot on these sessions, and it's basically your ability to affect the emotional state of somebody you never meet. And how it basically works is um, if you kind of bump into 20 people a day, and there's a random act of kindness, or you do something to make them feel positive, or whatever it is, the science says that you'll give them an average of a 10% uplift in their emotional state. Now they'll then go on and bump into 20 people and do the same, and then they'll go on to bump into 20 people and do the same. What happens there is that you've actually given about approximately 8,000 people an average of a 10% uplift in their emotional state, even though you've never met them, just by bumping randomly into 20 people. Um, so that's a pretty staggering thing, really, when you think about the science of it. I'm just going to pull the screen off there and stop sharing that for a second. Um, so, Jane and Martin, have you come across any of that stuff before in terms of, you know, that 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 impact kind of stuff?
No.
Um, so that's what we call a psychological constant in positive psychology. So it's a scientific fact, and it's present constantly. Um, doesn't matter if you don't know about it, or you know about it and you don't kind of take it into consideration. But hyperdyadic spread is the thing that it's this ripple effect, and it only ever works for uh, three sequences of contacts, if you like. And then after about the third sequence, it drops right off the edge. It drops down to about 2 to 4% emotional uplift for people that come into contact as the fourth kind of ring. It's like, when if you've seen those little visuals that you drop a pebble into a pond and you see the ripples. It's the psychological equivalent of that, and it runs out for three ripples. But just from 20 people a day, you're going to affect the emotional state of 8,000 people. Um, and I remember talking to a nursing team in a hospital, and the deputy director of nursing jumped, put a mic on, and she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "I've just realised I've been a mood hoover for 20 years and I've got to do something about it." But what she was shocked about was how much she affected people within the nursing and nursing supporting ranks. She didn't think. She thought when she was being mean to people, she was just being mean to one person. She didn't realise she was having that knock-on effect in terms of they then go away and tell 20 people, they go away and tell 20 people. And before you know it, you've got this 8,000 thing looming. It's really good. I mean, when me and Nikki presented last week to this 543 delegate thing, the master of ceremonies was on his calculator on his phone working out what the hyperdiatic spread was for people getting an emotional uplift on the session, and he says we're into millions, and I was going, but that's the power of kindness and positivity. He's going, I just can't believe we're not telling people about this. So it's a lovely little thing, hyperdiatic spread. And guys, we're gonna share this with you. We're going to share the deck with you. So I'm not necessarily going to go through every single slide in the deck, because you can have a look at it. And if there's anything in the deck you want to test out, we can link up with you, and we'll come and potentially convince you to be kindness and positivity coaches. But to help you test out anything you want to test out. Now there's another little concept I want to pitch to you, and it's quite a big concept. So I'd reach for the paracetamol, because it's not hard. It's not hard to understand, but again, it's rooted in positive psychology, and it does help with personal resilience and goal achievement and goal setting and things like that. So there is this notion, and it's a model basically, that our results, the outcomes we achieve in life, are due to our behaviours. And our behaviours are down to how we think. And how we think is down to the inputs to our minds. And the inputs to our minds are down to what we choose to focus on. So it's thoughts. It's our thoughts that drive our outcomes, if you want to follow the little. And in the deck, you'll see a lovely little visual that shows that, it's your thoughts that determine how you feel, and how you feel determines how you act, and how you act determines the outcomes you get. So if you're not comfortable with the outcomes you're getting, or you want to change the outcomes you're getting, the idea is not to think about what actions you need to do, it's change the way you think. And it's a lovely little way to people who kind of think of it in those terms end up being a lot more successful than people who think they can just have to go out and do things differently, because it starts with how you think and how you feel. Now, but here's the reality around this. Here's the thing that's going to cause your brain to hurt a little bit. Our thoughts aren't real. They're not real. But our reality is experienced through our thoughts. So if we're interacting with people, if we're on a task, if we're walking the dog down the beach, or whatever it is we're doing.
Okay, cool.
Oh, it's great to see you. And do you know what? I've just kind of landed a concept with Jane and Martine that's made them scratch their head a bit and go, reach for the paracetamol. It's a concept around, while thinking drives our actions and actions drive our outcomes, our thoughts aren't real. But it's through our thoughts we experience our reality.
Yeah.
So how can they not be real if our reality comes to us through our thoughts?
Yeah.
So my top tip on that one is don't try and work it out, because you'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, I think I've got it. Oh God, no, I haven't. And then you won't be able to go back to sleep. How does that land, guys? Martina, how does that land in terms of, is that something you kind of buy into? You can think, well, goodness, yeah, I kind of know when I'm having a good day or a bad day, and I'm enjoying the beach, or I'm not enjoying what I'm doing in NASA or whatever. how's that land in terms of a concept?
I'm trying to think about it personally. I think I can see it professionally. So in terms of working with people who have disfluency and sort of personal construct psychology and how that thought, you know, sort of you can change your thought to influence your reality, and how you think about life can be changed. So we use that concept in our work. So yeah, it lands well and makes sense in this context when you take the next step.
Fantastic. Jane, what are you thinking there?
Oh, yeah, it definitely rings true with me. So I've read something before. She's an American woman called Gabby Bernstein. I don't know if you've come across her. She's like a life coach. She's sort of writes all these inspirational books, but she has a thing about fear. She said fear, if you think of it in a different way, is false evidence appearing real. And that's always rung true with me. And particularly, I did have a work situation a few months ago when I thought I'd been sent a really short and rude email. And I downed tools and I thought, well that's ruined my day. And I was in a really foul mood for the rest of the day and the evening. But then by what I thought this person had said or meant, but then I read it again the next day, and it didn't say what I thought it meant at all. It wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was when I reread it the next day, and I just thought, wow, like that's quite amazing. That I've completely misinterpreted that, and it's ruined my day. You know, me thinking that was the reality, and it wasn't the reality. So that completely rings true with me.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thanks for sharing that. And welcome Heather and Helen to our tents. Julie's coming in as well. Heather, do you want to just flick your camera on and give us a wave? And Helen as well, if you're there, if you're in a position to flick your cameras on and just give us a wave there. We've got Helen coming in here. Hi, Helen, give us a big wave there. Oh, lovely to see you. Welcome, Helen. Where are you joining us from today, Helen?
Can you hear me? Because my internet signal isn't great. I'm joining from home today. I'm a little bit of a fish out of water. I'm a hospital consultant, but I work in part of Improvement CTM with Becky Thomas. So, but I was interested to join this tent because it's something I feel very strongly about. And over the last 2 years, it's been a very difficult time for everybody. So I ended up writing a poetry book about my emotions that's being sold on Amazon for the loyalties all going to charity. But it was how I dealt with some of the experiences. But definitely the sort of things you're talking about, even though I don't understand the psychology in and out, ring true because I have had many people in my office, ranging from chaplains to domestics to doctors to nurses to everybody in tears over the last 2 years. So,
gosh.
And I do believe those little acts of kindness are the things that change your day.
Absolutely. So, we're so lucky to have you. In fact, if it's okay with you, me and Nikki, who's my kind of co-host partner in crime on these things, would love to have a chat with you offline, actually, because we're talking about producing a pocket guide to kindness and positivity that we want to do the same thing for, in terms of to write something that colleagues can take around with them and use in work, literally a genuine pocket guide, to try and, just as another thing to be able to get the word out and make it accessible to people. So, so what brilliant and welcome and well done you on getting your book sorted, and that's an inspiration if ever there was one.
It's called Reflections Through the Waves.
Well, stick it in the chat for us, Helen, and we'll pick that up.
I'll try.
And we'll give you a shout out on that as well, because that's the kind of thing that the whole Fab thing's about, isn't it? And helping people, and sort of, it is a bit about being your best self, but sort of coping sometimes, isn't it? Just with what we're doing. And no, lovely to meet you. Thanks for joining us. And we've got Heather as well. Heather, flick your camera on. Heather, give us a wave.
Did Heather just say she's on a train? I think.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on a train, so her connection isn't great. So I think it might be a bit difficult.
No.
Although she'll have audio, I think probably that might be testing the signal too much if she turns a camera on as well, which is fair enough.
Special award for hopping onto the tent there from British Rail, whatever they call Avanti, whatever it is these days. No, that's fantastic. So, well, thank you for joining us. And Jane just spoke us through a cracking kind of personal experience there in terms of, getting an email, reading it, and creating a script in your head in terms of what that meant to you. And I tell you what that links to, guys. It links to a concept called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And what happened to Jane there was, and NLP, by the way, is a really brilliant thing to look into in a bit of detail. You can go on formal courses and become NLP practitioners. And me and Nikki use some NLP principles in our slide decks for kindness and positivity. By the way, we don't tell people we do it. We just pick the ideas and present them as simply as possible. What we don't say is we'll draw it on this principle of NLP, because people will just go, oh, really? I thought I was going to talk about resilience or kindness or whatever, so I'm not going to listen to that. But what happened is, so when information comes our way through our senses, our brain does three things instantly. It deletes, distorts, and generalizes it. And the reason why it does that is because we get about 20 million bits of information hit our brain per second, but we can only deal with about 5,000 bits of information a second. That's the reality of our brain. So, rather than put us all into a bit of a comatose state, a bit like your laptop when it's trying to update things at the same time as being on a Teams call, and it just won't have it and it locks up. Rather than doing that to our brains go, well, no, the first thing is this information important to me? No, right, delete it. You're not even going to be made consciously aware of it. Is it a task I have to do all the time, and I shouldn't really be putting any mental effort into doing this? Give you an example: driving, walking, things like that. So I'm going to generalize that. Every time you open the door, you tend to open it in the same way. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube videos of when they switch the door handles around, they put the handles upside down and people can't open the door, and it's because they've generalized that they have to push the handle down to open the door instead of pushing the handle up to open the door. That's a great example of generalization. And distort. So distort is when you look at something and you make something of it, and it's probably not as it is. And the great example of this is on some of the organisational development away days, you've probably been shown an image of and asked to point out where the old lady is versus the young woman. So it's the same image, but the same image shows you a young lady wearing a hat or an old lady. I don't know what the old lady's doing. And half the room will say, I can see the old lady, and half the room will say, I can't see the old lady, I can see a young lady. But the other half of the room saying there isn't a young lady on that image. And the answer is yes, there is an old and young lady on. Been very cleverly designed by psychologists to be, it's an illusion. It's a psychological illusion. It causes your brain to see two things, but you can only see one thing, but two things are present. And they use it to demonstrate the NLP principle of distortion. And that's what I mean by the concept that our thoughts aren't reality, but our reality comes to us through our thoughts. So Jane's reality around that email, she went off steaming, thinking, how dare you, I'm going to, what am I going to do next? She distorted that. But then what had happened is a lot of other stuff had gone through Jane's mind between when she first read the email, when she went back to revisit the email. And she switched from seeing the old lady in the photo to the young woman with the hat in the photo. I'm thinking, actually, that's probably different. That's why emails get us into so much trouble, because it's a lot more common with the written word than it is the spoken word. Any ideas why emails get us into more trouble than personal communication?
It's permanent, isn't it? It's there permanently. Whereas someone's speaking, it's fleeting, isn't it? And you've got that concrete evidence in front of you, and it remains there.
Yeah, that's a key thing for us. I think the other thing is, as well, is if we look at how we make sense of what people say, it's not to do with the words they say.
It's how they say it.
It's your tonality and physiology makes 70% of the communication, meaning according to how our brains work it out. And that's why your personal development coaches, particularly the guys in the US, have been really big on this for the last 20 years or so. Well, they'll just turn around and go, my time is precious. If I want to meet with somebody, I'm not going to be doing it digitally. I'm not going to be doing it by email. I'm going to be standing right in front of them, because they understand that 70% of the meaning of the communication comes from our tonality, how we say the words, but mostly how we present ourselves. They call it physiology in the States, but it's not really physiology as I understood it as a paramedic, but it is basically how you hold your body, isn't it? So Helen, you've got your hand up there, and then Terry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's not really communication, is it, an email? It's one-way communication, and proper communication is two-way. And I think some people aren't very good at writing emails to portray the message they want to portray. And also, of course, not many people, they may start reading an email and not read the rest of it. So it's, it's very common, isn't it?
Sorry.
That's all right.
We love that.
That's program, a good tone.
Terry. We love that program. Terry, you're on mute. Oh, Terry's on mute, bless her. No, that's absolutely true, Helen. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, there have been many times when I've known a lot of people upset by emails, either rightly or wrongly, but you can't really get very far with an email, because if you do upset somebody with an email, they'll either retaliate immediately with their first response, which makes it all go downhill, or they won't reply at all. And then you've lost that opportunity to be able to, bring in that influence that you wanted to originally.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think, and Terry will chip in on this one, I know, but it's interesting when we go for the digital communication. I don't know if you're aware. I was sent on a report writing course a few years back, because we had to produce reports for committees and the trust board, and they didn't really like the quality of what was coming from. I'd luckily just joined the organisation, so I wasn't part of the problem, but I wanted to do the course anyway. But the one thing I took away from it was the lady that was delivering the course to us said, when you read something digitally on a screen, your brain processes it in a different priority than if you were reading it in hard copy in a book or off paper. And I didn't realise that. So they said, basically, whilst we always read from right to left or whatever, in terms of how your brain interprets it, if you're reading a book, it will prioritise the top left-hand corner. If you're reading it from a screen, your brain puts more emphasis on the words in the top right-hand corner. And this has come out from a load of research, particularly in terms of how people of different generations emphasise and act on this whole thing about thoughts, behaviours, outcomes. They've found that if you put a load of text on an A4 sheet and split that sheet into quadrants, if you're reading it hard copy, you'll take most emphasis from the top left. If you're reading it on a screen, you'll take most emphasis from the top right. And then the next one is then the bottom left, and then bottom right, and then top right, top left. And it completely changes how your brain prioritizes the words on the page, even though you're still reading them in the same way that you would read on screen or on paper. And that came out of the research around the gaming community and how kids learn the iPad age, or whatever they used to call it. And it's completely different. It causes a completely different behavioural concept and how people respond and what happens as a consequence of prioritising that information in a different way. And it's exactly what happened to Jane when she went back to her email. And so the words in that email hadn't changed, Jane, had they? They were the same words, but the meaning you attached to the words did change, didn't they? And that changed how you responded. See what I mean? So that's your point, Helen, about the And Terry, jump in, Terry.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say I am a great. I like talking to people. Partly because I think because I am dyslexic, so writing isn't the best. I have to concentrate much more. But I think it's really important. It isn't just the word; it's the eye contact, it's your delivery, your whole demeanour. I think is so much more powerful than actually the words that you're saying. And I don't know about you, but there are sort of cliched words that you read in an email that we all have that kind of jargon. Yes, we've aligned, and I only have to find words like that which I will have a negative spin on what the email is saying because it's got words in it that I don't particularly like, so I will automatically think that the content of the email, if it starts off with one of these kind of sentences, I will perceive it in a different way. And as Jane did, I never respond immediately to an email ever. I will always go away, do something else, and come back to it. Never ever, because as you say, the majority of the time it isn't what I'll get irritated because I see this trigger word, and then that changes my perception of the whole content. And I suppose I've learned that about myself over the years by actually probably making a mistake responding immediately when actually it wasn't meant how I thought it was originally. So I've kind of learned that over many years by getting it wrong the first time. And that's why I think it's so important that we have opportunities like this so that we don't have to learn from getting it wrong. We can avoid getting it wrong in the first place by understanding this. So you can't, in the digital world, it's great to communicate like this because we can see each other, we can hear the intonation in each other's voices. And so we can do that, even though it's not face-to-face in person. But emails have become, almost like this, excuse for not having conversations. I think sometimes we use them to avoid having to have a conversation because maybe we're concerned how we will react, if it's a face-to-face so I think sometimes I use them as it's a quick couple of sentences because actually I don't really want to have this conversation at the moment with this individual, so I'm going to put it in an email. And I'm sure others do exactly the same to me. So I think that, and if we understand that, it possibly makes life easier. But I didn't know about how your brain is actually focusing differently, which actually it's strange. So in this whole lockdown era, I used to read all my books on a Kindle, and the minute we started living our life vicariously through a screen, I had this absolute urge, and so I've been buying proper books and I've been reading books. And I couldn't really answer because they're heavy, you've got to hold them and they're heavier and I couldn't. But potentially that's my head telling me, no, we're more comfortable reading like this. Or I don't know, but I never knew that at all. So that's fascinating.
And it's interesting because particularly with the books, because people's, apologies if you can hear my next door neighbour's little puppy out in the background barking. But the book thing's really quite interesting because depending on how old you are, it's like certain people will just say, I could never even think about buying a hard copy book. It's all on my Kindle. I've got 500 books on there and I've read them all. And that's their preferred mode of operation, if you like. It's like the kids and the games. It's like, if you got, my 25-year-old, I'm sitting in his little lounge now actually to talk to you guys today because he's asleep in bed. He's been doing a late shift, but He's got his great big telly and he's on his game, he's on his Xbox. And when those Xbox people want to advertise to him, they're going to flick something into the top right-hand corner of the screen because they know that his dominant brain will go, that's really important, look at it. Now, people like me, I love carrying physical. I will buy a book. It'll be a personal development book. I'll buy 2 highlighter pens and I'll highlight all the things I think are amazing. And I'll read the book cover to cover, but then I'll go back and every month I'll reread the highlights, just the highlights. And that's how I learn the material. And then I'll update our slide deck that me and Nikki use, because then I want everybody to be able to know about things like hyperdyadic spread, for instance, and the whole delete, distort generalization thing, because it does help you. If you're mindful of those concepts, it does help you. And like Terry's talking about email is one of the most common things that causes dissatisfaction at work at the moment. Email. Is that why, Helen, you put something into the chat there, or just it's gone? What were you saying, Helen? Oh, you're on mute, Helen.
I'm on mute. I was just saying, is that why the basket of a shopping site is always in the top right? To make you check out before you leave it there.
It's because your brain says that's important. That is important.
Yeah.
And it's not the words that make it important. It's where it is on the screen that tells your subconscious it's important. And it's all come from. I tell you what, guys, if the most amazing research around psychology has come from retail. It's how the retail people work out how to sell us more things we don't need. It's an amazing thing. But you know what? We spoke a little bit about this concept of hyperdyadic spread, Terry, and the concept that if we bump into 20 people randomly a day and do something, even if it's say hello, smile, tell them they've done a great job, buy them a coffee, then we can then affect the emotional uplift of 8,000 people a day by 10%, according to the positive psychologist scientists, and that's reality. So being aware of our impact. But there's a lovely little thing that we share as well, guys, and it's something I'd like you to take away today, and you'll see it in the deck when we send it out. And it's called spontaneous trait transference. Spontaneous trait transference. Has anybody heard of that at all? So this is a lovely little concept, and I'll tell you how it works. The first thing that's quite frightening, actually, is you can't do anything about it. It happens all the time. Whether you want it to happen or not, it will always happen. You've got no conscious control of spontaneous trait transference. So if we chunk it down in terms of, well, that sounds a bit jargonistic and a bit rubbish, really, but it actually, it's a bit like the Ronseal advert. It does say what it means on the tin. Spontaneous, so it happens in the moment. It happens instantaneously. It's not under our conscious will. So it's instantaneous, spontaneous. Trait transference. So Great stuff. So we'll just have a little look at this for a second then while we're getting Helen back on board. So this is the kind of the compelling case for kindness and positivity, as me and Nikki put it out in the session, really. So what the first thing is, what we want people to do is, as soon as you wake up in the morning, make a conscious decision to basically adopt the principles of kindness and positivity, and make a decision that, you know, it's kindness is the way to go, and that is a conscious decision. And the reason why we want you to think about that is because if you think about it, you're more likely to remember some of the stuff we're talking about, and to put it into practice. Now, the reason why we want you to do that is because, it's like we said at the beginning, it's a lot more than a nice thing to do. It's actually a million times more powerful than we would normally think. And we did kind of touch on the contagious factor of it and things like that. But the reality is, what happens when you make a conscious decision to be kind is your brain releases a chemical or a number of chemicals just because you've made a decision to be kind. And the very first act of kindness you're involved in, it's one of the things we kind of suggest to people is get a random act of kindness in as quickly as possible, as early into the day as you can. When you make a conscious decision to be kind and you are kind, there's a number of chemicals that are released, but there's one particularly called serotonin, and that's the trigger, that's the catalyst for what comes next. So you make your conscious decision to be kind and positive, particularly. So you get this chemical release in your brain. That then builds a feeling of confidence in yourself. It builds self-confidence. You feel confident because of making a decision to be kind. And that then builds self-esteem. It increases motivation. It inspires you to think about your key goals, personal and professional, and to do something to move you forward with those goals. And because it actually encourages you to move forward, you're more likely to do something, i.e. take action, and then that leads to kind of goal achievement and success for you and others. So basically, making the decision to be kind and positive and be that kind of person, personally and professionally, causes a chain reaction that is highly positive, and builds this cycle of confidence, ambition, goals, motivation, success. It causes I think predominantly it causes this sensation of you feel good about what you're doing and you feel capable about making things better or achieving things that you want to achieve, and helping others to do so. And then if you think about how that links then, what happens as a consequence of you being what me and Nikki would term to as you on a great day. So, you know, Jane Martin, you know, Jane, Nikki, you know, a conscious decision to be kind will create a chain reaction in that day that allows you to be you at your best. Now, when people see you going around with a smile on your face, you're still dealing with the same madness as everybody else, but you're more capable of dealing with it, and you'll make more success with dealing with constraints or challenges, and the good stuff as well, making sense of the good stuff, because of the state of mind you're in. And that state of mind, that confident, positive state of mind, has been triggered by a chemical release in your brain. It's as if you've taken a drug. Literally, it's the same thing. It's as if you've reached for the kindness pills, and you've taken a kindness pill and it's released this chemical. You've got a chain reaction, a chemical chain reaction that causes these things. Guys, can you see the cognitive triangle slide? Has that come up, Martin? Yeah, you got that one yet? Yeah. So, 10, 1, all right. So this is a great visual to just on one slide, on one picture, to put across in a very simple way the kinds of science we've been talking about. So psychologists call it the cognitive triangle, whereby our thoughts drive our feelings drive behaviours. What the cognitive triangle misses is, because I think this generally comes from clinical psychology, is our behaviours drive our outcomes. And this is a wonderful character called Zig Ziglar, who was like really famous in the personal development world in the 60s. And Zig Ziglar made a big thing about the inputs to our minds. And like we said earlier, and when you change the input to your mind, when you understand that it's not the stuff that's external to us that causes us to be the way we are, it's how we think about the stuff that causes us to be how we are. Once you understand that, our world is internally generated, it's through our thoughts, you can then decide what you choose to think about. And if you change the inputs to your mind, what you choose to focus on, like we spoke about with the RAS and filters, and you get more of what you focus on stuff. When you change what that stuff is, you change the output of your lives completely. And it's a really lovely thing that Zig Ziglar kind of spent a lot of his career talking about. So kind of starts with you guys. It's a bit like when you're on the plane and you're going through turbulence and the oxygen masks drop, and they will say, put your own mask on first, because you can't help anybody else in your family if you're lying there without any oxygen in you, unconscious. Kindness is the same thing, and me and Nikki say this a lot. So you've got to start with yourselves. It's got to start with your decision to say, right, I'm a kind of can-do person. I'm going to make a conscious decision to be kind. I get the whole chemical triggering thing. I get the whole thing that I can be more likely to be my best self and help others be their best self by choosing to be kind and positive. I'm going to get a random act of kindness in as early as possible as I can in my day. I'm going to do at least one thing that moves me forward with my personal and professional goals. I'm going to be grateful for one thing in my life. Attitude of gratitude is a great way to build a mindset of positivity and continuous improvement and best self kind of stuff. And we've spoken about the random acts of kindness for the people, but do at least one thing for yourself. It's that, thinking about keeping that jug of water as clear as it can be and not letting it get toxic sludge. What's the act of kindness that you're going to do for yourself today? We spoke about when Terry joined it, particularly around surrounding yourselves with the kind of people that value you and help you be successful. Sometimes we've got no choice to spend time with mood hoovers, personally or professionally, and that can be tricky. But what we kind of say to colleagues about mood hoovers is, where possible, minimise the time you spend with mood hoovers. But when you have to spend time with mood hoovers, don't let, this was Nikki's point about when people think that kindness and positivity is a negative thing, don't let their thinking influence your thinking. What you think about what happens to you around you and what experiences you have is your decision. It's up to you. If you don't like how that stuff's affecting you, reframe it and find a different way of thinking about it. And take control of your own destiny, really. And I haven't got a slide on this, but we'll probably put it in the deck for you. But I've got a little slide that we use, and it's basically it's a red T-shirt and a green T-shirt. And when anything happens to us, we can decide how we want to respond to that. And what we need to decide is, with how I'm currently portraying myself, in response to the situation. So, I don't know, say Jane's reading that email again, or she's in a situation at work. What we kind of try and encourage colleagues to do is step outside of their own bodies, if you like, and watch yourself dealing with that situation, and come up, make a judgment. And the judgment we want you to make is, am I behaving as somebody who is proactive, in control of my destiny? I can decide how I respond to this. Or are you responding as a victim? And victim behaviours are things like getting upset. You know, I think it was Tony Robbins, personal development coach in the States, who was saying, nobody can upset you without your permission. If you're upset with how you've been spoken to or somebody's treated you, that's because you've made a conscious decision to be upset. You've allowed that event to upset you. What you can say is, well, no, I've caught myself in a victim mode wearing my red t-shirt. I'm going to put the green t-shirt on. I'm going to say, hang on a minute. I acknowledge that what you said was unkind, but that's your problem, matey. And particularly like Nikki's point, if you've got a problem with my kindness and positivity and helping people be their best selves, that is your problem. I choose to believe that by being my best self will inspire people to be their best selves, and by me helping them to achieve their potential, and in our healthcare context, provide the kind of care we'd expect for ourselves and our families, that is a worthy thing to do. If you believe that, then that same experience will have a different meaning for you, because you've got a green t-shirt on, and you just then program your brain to say, this person's not worthy of my attention, let alone me feeling negative as a response of what they've said to me. And very often, if people are negative and pull you down, it's because of their own personal insecurities, and they see you as a threat. They might even fear being exposed as a mood hoover, or somebody who is not capable of this kind of mental kind of paradigm, if you like, how we see the world, in terms of people. And very, very high achieving people get these kinds of things and they put them into practice. That's the key thing. It's not that they're superheroes, born and gifted to be incredibly successful. It's just because they choose to believe that they can, to a large degree, determine their outcomes by being the best possible version of themselves as they can. And that starts with a conscious decision to be kind to people. And we've all worked with people who we will work with them, time and time again, because of the way they make us feel. And it's a lovely slide Nikki delivers about, you'll very often forget what people say to you or what people do, but you'll never forget how they make you feel. And that's true. And what happens with that is your subconscious mind remembers it. It programs into your brain how different people make you feel. And it's a lovely little concept that Tony Robbins describes beautifully. And he calls it neuro-associated conditioning. And I'll give you an example of neuro-associated conditioning, or NAC as he calls it. Have you ever had a feeling when you've seen your mobile phone buzzes and you look down and you see somebody's name flash up and you think, oh my God, what do they want? Or somebody walks in the office and you go, oh God, they're here again. Or you see an email from somebody at work and they go, oh, Martine, I'd like to speak to you before the end of the day, please. And you automatically get a negative feeling. You think, oh my God, what's coming? And it'll be, you've got to be away from work or finish dead on 5:30 or something. You've got family plans. It's really important. There's hardly any other day in the year you need to finish on time. And they'll want to talk to you 15 minutes towards the end of the day. And they're going to drone, right? You just get this sinking feeling, don't you, in the pit of your stomach? And that's before they've said anything. That's called neuro-associated conditioning. Your mind has learned that when something comes from that person, you're going to get this negative feeling. Your mind has just latched them into the mood hoover category. So that's NAC, that's neuro-associated conditioning. People who practice kindness and positivity have the same effect on people. they still trigger neuroassociated conditioning. But instead of having a gloomy downward feeling, you get the opposite. You think, oh my gosh, look who's trying to get in touch. I can't wait to talk to them. And that's knack in action. That's knack in action. I'm identifying, but then thinking, what was that? Was that you, Jane? Did you write that? No, who wrote?
It's Julie. I just sometimes think I identify with that. Oh God, they're going on, and then I'm thinking, oh, actually, is it me? Am I the one that they're always going, oh, here she comes, droning on? So it's that kind of double-edged sort of feeling about some of these, thinking, I'm going to have to start giving people permission to say, right, you're being a mood hoover now, Julie. You've had your 5 minutes. Knock it on the head, and yeah.
Oh, Julie, that's a great comment. Flick your screen on, give us a wave, Julie.
I will do in a bit. I'm sort of in between bits and pieces, but I will before we finish the session.
Oh, bless you. Oh, well, listen, thank you for chipping in there. And yeah, do you know what? I think you can't. Oh, Nikki, you're looking good. Nikki's in with a new hairstyle. Julie makes a great point there, and we might find ourselves actually wearing our victim T-shirt and portraying ourselves as a victim. I know I certainly do a lot when somebody will say something and then I'll react, and I'll think, oh my God, you're being a victim because you're reacting to that person. And if you cared anything about them, why would you? They're not a super achiever. They're not a kind and happy person generally. They're a mood hoover that pulls people down and finds fault with everything. So what are you doing reacting to them? And I think, oh yeah, you're right. So sometimes we all find ourselves in that space, and we all have off days. But the concept of what we try and teach for people is, go and have an off day, or a couple of off days, but don't make it a month. Don't make it a week. We're not superhuman. That's the key, really. And what we want people to be mindful of is just a bit of emotional intelligence, really. So just to have a think about, when you're talking to people, are they a top 2%er, kind and positive? Are they out for being the best selves and helping others be the same? Are they mood hoovers to be avoided or minimised or not taken seriously? Do they value me? Are they the kind of person I want to hang out with? Are they going to help me achieve my potential? Or are they somebody I shouldn't really be concerned with? And it's just that level of emotional intelligence. There's some key ideas around what we could do potentially to use kindness and positivity. I think the biggie is that choosing to be kind is a choice, and it's a conscious decision, and it's the only conscious decision we can make in this context, because everything else isn't conscious, it's subconscious. The serotonin release is a chemical release. We can't consciously release serotonin. We'd be doing it all the time. I wish we could buy it. I wish we could get it off Amazon. Let's have some serotonin pills, please. We'll have them. We'll be best selves all the time. Like vitamin pills. Why don't they sell serotonin as a vitamin pill so we can all be our best selves? But it is a chemical release, and it's a million times more powerful than we could ever really conceptualize. It's not just this thing of being nice. It's a nice thing to do. It's a nice thing to be on the end of. It's a million times more powerful than that. But being kind at work is interesting. And we talk to people about making kindness commitments to themselves and others. And one of the kindness commitments for work is something that Nikki tested for us. She was our national pilot site down in Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells, and Nikki tested a concept called Great Place to Work, and the principle being, we kind of all get the idea that if you really want to provide a service that you'd be happy for yourself and your family to receive, you've got to create an environment where your team can be at their best selves and and be supported and valued, and really look forward to working in that environment, as opposed to just turning up and taking the salary at the end of the month. And Nikki did an amazing job. I'm going to embarrass her because I'm going to flick a slide up, I think, and she can talk to it. But Nikki did an amazing job at testing this out. We picked on Nikki deliberately because of her mindset and her attitude to the whole kindness and positivity thing. And we just knew. I got this little hypothesis, which I didn't share with her at the time, but I shared with our people back at NHS headquarters. And it was in the context of how can we stop hemorrhaging staff from the NHS. If the NHS recruited every school leaver for the next 5 years, it still couldn't fit a vacancy rate. So that's how many staff we're losing. And I had this wacky idea that if we identified kind and positive people in the system across the NHS, and we helped them understand a bit about kindness and positivity, and we helped them do something like making it a great place to work for their team, then if they could create great places to work, what we needed to do then is get those people into positions where they can positively infect as many people as possible. And then what you'd see is a shift of people wanting to work for those people and not work for the mood hoovers. And we never shared that with Nikki until she actually went through the process. And Nikki will tell you some of the stuff that happened with that. But let's just say she was in no short supply of people that wanted to work with Nikki. And it had diddly squat to do with the ward or the service of the hospital. It was to do with the culture that was created. And Nikki was not in no short supply of mood hoovers. She'd actually got a fair share of mood hoovers, but she'd actually got some very toxic stuff going on as well. So it wasn't that she got lots of support from people all around her who thought she was amazing. She got some real tyrants around her. Some of those people she spoke about that just thought kindness and positivity was a negative thing. She'd actually. So, Nikki, do you want to talk to the jumping slide?
Yeah, no worries. So, along with Paul, I absolutely adore this photo, because when you look at these people, when you look at these ambulance service crews, do you feel like, looking at them, that you would get amazing care from these guys? Do you think that you would get awesome gold star care from this group of people? I don't think any one of them's feet are touching the floor. They're all, excited. They're all motivated. So yeah, you would assume that these people are going to give you great care. If they were sort of all planted on the floor, sort of sitting down, looking off in the distance, a bit miserable, you'd be kind of worried about the kind of care you might get, or the care your relatives might get, or friends and family might get. So for me, this picture really sums up what Great Place to Work is. It's about being positive. It's about having that mindset of, yes, I do like where I come to work, and I have an invested interest in my workplace, and they listen and they empower me to make changes possible. So yeah, I really do love this photo.
Has your Ward 33 come up?
Yes, it has. Okay, so this is the results of the survey that I did on my ward. So back in 2019, I was a ward manager for a gynecology women's unit, which incorporated an emergency gynae unit. And the staff had been through quite a lot in the years that preceded me. They had students stopped work. Students weren't allowed to come to work to the ward anymore because of high incidence of complaints. The ward wasn't functioning properly. It didn't have a ward manager for a long time, and then it had a succession of different ones. So the staff were low morale. So when Paul came to me with Great Place to Work, I was like, excellent, yes, we need to do this. We need to ensure that everybody feels like they have a voice. So what we did was we did a survey, and this was a grassroots survey. So it wasn't anything to do with the trust. It wasn't anything to do with the execs. It was all to do with staff empowerment and what staff felt. So I gave them all the survey. They scored their place to work from 1 to 10. So 1 being like awful, didn't want to come, hated it. 10 being like the most awesome place to go. And when I received the data back, I asked them to write why they wrote that score. So if they wrote a 10, why do you feel like this is amazing? Why do you love your work so much? If it was a 1, why don't you like it? What can we do? So then we collated the data and we looked at the top 3 trends of what made our ward not so great. One of them was appropriate bed usage. Now this was pre-COVID, so you know, bed usage, if you know, I'm now a clinical site manager, so I know more than most about appropriate bed usage, but you know, at the time it was a real concern, because being a gynae ward, we were getting inappropriate patients that were being outlied, but obviously, you know, you have to help the site to be safe. The other thing was IT and staff shortages. So what I got the staff to do was, I had a flip chart in the staff room. I put quadrants on this flip chart, and I headed them with the top 3 things that we could try and do. And I got them to give me ideas, because I didn't want it to be, as a manager, what is the problem? Let me fix it. It was what is the problem? Let us fix it. What can we do together as a team to make these things better? So, you know, we managed to get new computers from IT. So, you know, that really helped the ward out, because of the age of technology. If you have slow computers, it just runs your day down. You know, you're stuck ordering bloods for like, you know, 15 minutes when you could be doing other things. So we managed to get a lot of things done. Staff shortages, you know, we managed to backfill quite a few posts, which was great. And then things started getting better. People started feeling more empowered to voice what they wanted to do. And I ended up growing it a little bit beyond this by having a attitude of gratitude wall. So if any of the staff members came up with little innovative things, then I would stick their face on a wall and be like, I had a staff nurse called Janet. She decided to buy these little hooks from, I can't remember where she got them from, like Primark or something, and she stuck them on the utility cupboard, and she would hang the IVs off that hook to run them, to save her from standing there all day with her hand in the air. And this was like the most revolutionary thing that the nurses could have, because actually, instead of standing there with their arm in the air, you know, trying to prime a line and whatnot, they could just hang it on the hook, do what they need to do, and then go and take it to the patient. Just one little thing that made the ward a happier place. And it sounds silly, but it worked. You know, the nurses would come in and go, what are these hooks on the wall? Realise what they were. And that one thing that Janet did just changed the whole jog round for some people. So the Great Place to Work survey really did help us identify what we needed to do as a team, and me as a manager, to make the staff really want to come to work. And then we resurveyed, and then, you know, it goes on. It's a continual process. And, you know, Paul is right. We did have a lot of people wanting to come and work on the wards. You know, the students that we had wanted to apply, and, you know, it was a great culture, and, you know, I loved managing it, and I loved being a part of the team. But we did have those mood hoovers. We did have those people that would sit there at the desk and not cooperate, not want to take part, couldn't see the point. Oh, you know, she'll be gone in a few months, you know, I'm not going to listen to her. Little do they know, even as a site manager, I still go to the ward, and I still sit there, and I still talk to them, and I still try and help them figure things out, you know. And it's about empowering them to make change. And, you know, if you've heard of the School for Change Agents, which if you haven't, you know, get onto it with Horizons, it's an amazing course. They teach you how to rock the boat without tipping it over. So for me, it's about empowerment, and it's about bringing your staff up and saying, you know, actually, I have an idea. Can we test it? Absolutely, we can. You know, there is no. There is yeah, sure. And if I don't particularly agree with it, and I think maybe we need to go another way, instead of saying no, I was like, well, let's think about it another way. Have you thought about this? You know, let's try it. and it just made such a lovely culture because people felt that they could make changes, and that is what it's all about.
So Nikki, brilliant, thank you. So that's one example of a commitment to kindness in the workplace. And what Nikki didn't tell you is that project, that test of change, drew the interest of a chief exec as well, who did go along to Nikki and want to soak up some of that culture. And do you know what? You don't need many people with these ideas. I don't know if you've ever seen a video called the Shirtless Dancing Man. Yeah, and I'd not seen that video before joining NHSI, and our boss Pete, it's one of his favourite things ever, and it's fantastic to think that you might have somebody with an idea, but it's the first followers are more important than the leader when it comes to getting an idea into action. And when we were thinking about, I was thinking we've got to make it a great place to work, otherwise we're just not going to get, we've got to stop people from leaving the NHS, and we've got to start getting really positive cultures. I just thought if we could get a handful of people across the country, like Nikki and that mindset, then we would start creating a bit of a social movement. And I've always hubbed it out of the Fab Academy, because I love the concept of Fab in terms of it's a social movement. So it's not a policy top-down thing. It's a social movement from the troops on the front line. But the idea then, people to share the ideas. So like with you guys today, we're sharing the kindness and positivity ideas. In the true spirit of Fab would say, right, now take those principles and go and make them better, and then come back to us and share them back into the Fab Academy. And that's what I thought. That's why today we've deliberately held off a little project waiting for the Fab Change 21. So we've had about near enough 3,000 people get exposed to these principles over the last year, and every single group, somebody has asked, how can I link up with like-minded people going forward? So it's just not one session. How can I get help to test these ideas and to regroup with people who want to test these ideas, and we can inspire each other? So I had an idea of forming a kindness and positivity network, and we're going to launch it today. So you guys are actually the first cohort of the kindness and positivity network, and we're going to write out to everybody who's asked for this and over the last year and say the network's going live as a part of the Fab Change 21, because it often needs to operate on the same principles as Fab Change does. So Julie, lovely to see you, Julie.
Hi, just really enjoying this conversation and just reflecting on some of the things that have been said earlier. I think sometimes when you're sort of trying to take a positive stroke and kind approach, you can sometimes feel that you're not viewed with the same seriousness, and so things that I think that I'm just being slightly foolish, which I'm happy to wear that t-shirt, it's that knock-on impact. And just thinking about some of the things that we've done over the last year, where a bit of on a whim, and thinking about the social movement bit, we did 10-minute discos over Teams, and we did that. It sort of grew and sort of it kind of went naturally with what people wanted, so it kind of lasted from about February to July. But that connection, that it was amazing to see, and I did it for a bet. It was just a really silly thing, but I thought, I'm going to do it. It might be a bit of fun. And at one point, I think I had about 80 or 90 people on Teams dancing for 10 minutes and all chatting to each other, and people who I didn't even know worked in the organisation, departments that I didn't even know existed. There were a few mood hoovers because the invitation got shared and shared and shared, so some people got really irritated. But it's sometimes, and it's like you say, Nikki, your thing, it's like taking those very simple things and then the impact on people and then how they pass that forward. And people now still come back and they'll say, "Are you the lady that did the discos?" And I think, "Oh yeah, that's me." And and I think, "Oh, you know what? If that's all I ever get remembered for, then I'm good with that. That's fine." But,
wow. How many people do you think took part in that?
Well, I think when I tried to count, there would be maybe 80. It looked like there was 80 or so users, but then in each one it might be, like there'd be a group of staff in an office, or like they'd managed to kind of took some time off from where they were, and then they kind of obviously shared it out. And I think some have gone on to do little things of their own that piggybacked off that. Yeah. So it's quite big at one point.
Just say there was 150 people who experienced that. Just say there's potentially a lot more, but if just say there was as a minimum 150 people experienced that. I don't know if you were around for when we were talking about the principle of hyperdyadic spread and this 3 ripple effect. So you basically gave 150 people directly a 10% uplift in their emotional state, right? So it was an act of kindness that generated a 10% uplift in people's emotional state. Applying the rule of hyperdyadic spread, you would have hit 60,000 people with a 10% uplift in emotional state.
Wow.
And that's because if each one of those 150 people went away and bumped into a random 20 people within 24 hours, at home, at the supermarket, at work, at the gym, whatever, and then the 20 people they bumped into 20 people each. That's how the hyperdyadic spread calculation works. You would have given 60,000 people a 10% uplift in their emotional state, even though you've never met them. You only met 150.
Wow.
So that's what me and Nikki teach in terms of be aware of your impact, because that's the impact of kindness and positivity. But the mood hoovers do the same thing, but for the negative thing, it drops down then, doesn't it? But that just shows. So your 10-minute discos, if you wanted to, I think 10-minute discos, we should have thought, I tell you what, if we'd known about 10-minute discos a week ago, we would have done it today. So we would have done it today as part of Fab Change Day. If we did a national event to put 500 people experiencing 10-minute discos through Fab Change or something, you would hit 200,000 people with a 10% uplift in their emotional state.
Wow.
So that's why it's really important. So, it's like the way we treat people at work, right, knocks onto their families and their families and their friends, and the whole thing. So like Nikki will take a view that I need to make the ward a place where I'd be proud for my sisters to come and work. And look what happened. Nikki, you weren't short of staff, were you? People wanting to come and work with you? Yeah, staff.
Yeah. We were really fortunate because we'd created such a lovely culture on the ward that people did want to come and work for us, and people did want to come and do bank shifts. We weren't short of any of that, which was lovely. But as Paul said, behaviour does breed behaviour. So if you're in a positive mood and you're acting and you're walking into wherever your environment is and you're saying, "Oh, good morning, how are you? Oh, it's lovely to see you. How's your day? How's your weekend?" Whatever you're going to say. We do also need to be mindful that those people that are negative are going to do the same thing, which is what Paul was saying. They'll come in and they'll be like, "Oh God, it's awful today. Oh, I can't be bothered. I can't be asked. I don't want to do it today. I don't want to be here. Blah blah blah." And then you almost get sucked in yourself. So it's trying to distance yourself from that and actually saying, "No, I'm actually going to have a good day. It might be awful. The ceiling might be caving in. There's a sinkhole in the bottom of the hospital. But you know what? I'm going to have a good day, and I'm going to ensure that the people around me are going to have a good day." And that is what it's all about. And then that spreads on, and behavior just breeds behavior. And before you know it, you've got people around you that are in as good a mood as you are. And I'm not saying that every day you're going to be in an amazing mood and that you're going to be like Little Miss Sunshine every 5 seconds, because you are going to have days where you just feel like, you know, this is not working. Why am I doing this? But actually, if you, as Paul said before, if you have that moment, because we all have those moments, just say, ugh, do you know what? Nah. And I think, no, hang on a minute. I'm not going to live here. I've had that. I'm going to pull my big pants up, my special flying pants, and I'm just going to take the day again. And that's important, that shift in mindset.
Fantastic. Guys, that's a lovely reason why we do want to create an opportunity to make sure that we keep in touch with you. And, you know, using the Fab Academy kind of positive social movement and meeting with like-minded people idea to put the kindness and positivity message out through the Fab Academy, because it fits so beautifully. And it's like people that are part of what we're doing today are of that mindset. They are the kind-do people. They are the people that think I can make the world work. And it might all be rubbish, but I can do 1 or 2 things that makes my bit of the world not as rubbish as other parts of the world. Helen's got a hand. Helen, is this a legacy hand or is it a new hand? It's hard to tell because
it's a new hand. Can you see me now?
Oh, I've got you, Helen.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, welcome back, Helen.
Yes, I've managed to log in through the home network. I was just going to say that I did something similar. I'm currently in the position of Associate Medical Director of Quality Improvement, and I'm a Quality Improvement Skills Tutor for HEIW, which is the Welsh education system for doctors, dentists, pharmacists, etc. And I'd started getting interested, I guess, in QI and making the workplace a better place a long time ago. And about 2015, I had multidisciplinary quality improvement teams working together on projects, and a similar thing to what Nikki was saying, taking the ideas from everybody. And we have porters in them, we have biochemists in them, we have you know, the domestic staff, anybody who's on that ward environment. And that, over the years, whilst they were working on certain quality improvement projects that were aimed at, say, the management of acute kidney injury or something else, what changed in the background was the culture. So I ended up, but I was doing it in my sort of spare time, even though I didn't have much spare time. But I ended up with sort of trying to manage 200 people across our site, with trying to coordinate their groups, etc. But I did notice that the culture was changing, and I wasn't hearing as much negativity. If I was sitting on the ward, somebody behind me wouldn't be saying, oh, there's none of those, and we never have any of those, and they're not printed, and it's all rubbish, because that negativity is like a cancer, isn't it? It spreads throughout. And I can still remember a lot of people in those teams doing favours for each other, like putting Ventflons in for somebody who was going for a scan, even though it wasn't their patient, or, you know, it improved the communication and, very importantly, the mutual respect. So a lot for me was about breaking down those barriers, and it still is, those hierarchical barriers. So having nobody saying in those groups, I'm just a, you know, healthcare assistant, because people have the best ideas when they're at the coalface every day. And as I always say to my consultant colleagues, they see more of your patients than you do. So, you know, they know how to make things better. But the challenge I had at the time was to get the organisation to buy into that. And I was doing the job of Associate Medical Director in Quality and Safety at the time. We didn't really have an improvement team in the health board. Obviously, we're launching this week, and we've come a long way over the last couple of years. But that's what my work has all been about. That's what I'm very passionate about, is changing that culture.
Oh, and you know, everybody on our call, and hopefully we'll get more colleagues this afternoon. I think if you know, thinking about that YouTube video, the shirtless dancing man, you know, turning a lone nut into a massive social movement. You know, if we can be those kinds of first followers, you only need about 15-20% of people in any community to tip it. It's like, you know, Nikki was saying earlier, the kind of shoal fish thing. So because people often say, well, you know what, I don't want to stand out as the weird one. But not long after I joined NHS Improvement, I was asked to attend a national team meeting where our National Director of Improvement for the NHS was there. And I was asked my team was hosting it, it was our turn to host it. And we had to deliver the day and present on the day. And right up until the day before, I wouldn't tell them what my session was. And I'd got a 20-minute session. And in the end, I had this really angry person on the phone to me saying, you're at risk of making us look really bad in front of the National Director of Improvement. You've got to tell us now what your session's going to be. And I said, I'm going to bring my deck on the day, don't worry about it. And they said, we insist. If you don't tell us, we're going to escalate it. So we were working with a control freak who wanted to make sure that she knew every bit of detail, even what time we were likely to go to the toilet on that event because of the VIPs that were attending. And I said, I'm going to present on kindness and positivity. And do you know what she said to me? She said, do you really want to get yourself sacked? She said, how do you think that's going to land with the kinds of people we've got in that seminar? And I said, we're going to find out. And she said, well, I suggest you to find something quick, sharp to present on it, but it definitely can't be that. So basically, I did deliver on that. And they thought it was great, and they asked me to share it with other teams. The person that was trying to manage the whole day was furious with me. She's left the organisation now, and she never forgave me for that because she thought that I was the person that let them down. The reality was everybody loved the concept of if you want the kind of care, if you want your teams to more often than not deliver the kind of care you'd expect for yourself and your family, you've got to make it a great place to work, and you've got to make sure they can be their best selves. And you're not going to get that from bawling at them, being mood hoovers, making them feel. I've met people. I met somebody in a car park in the middle of Birmingham. Shouldn't tell you where it was really. I used to work there as a head of quality and performance. It's been very unprofessional, so I can't share that. But it was Dudley Road Hospital in the middle of Birmingham anyway, Dudley Road Hospital. And I was walking into the hospital and I met this man, very, very good professional, very kind gentleman, who felt physically sick with the thought of going into a meeting with a meeting that he had to chair. And he had to chair a meeting with the clinical directors, which were the senior doctors of each of the divisions in the hospital. And he felt physically sick because they were such a bunch of toxic mood hoovers. He thought it was like, horrible. And he was the medical director. And I said, you just need to rethink who your clinical directors are, don't you? We did some of that work. And it was an awful time. But the reality was, I said, would you be happy for your daughter, who was going through medical school at the time, to work for that gentleman? And in that firm, and he said, I'd be beside myself if I thought he had anything to do with her. He's a gifted clinician and he does his job very well, but he doesn't value anybody, and he's nasty to patients, and he doesn't tolerate young doctors coming through making mistakes. He thinks nurses live on a different planet. He said, I'd be totally beside myself if I thought my daughter had to have anything to do with his team. And I said, Martin, you're the medical director, get a grip. And we upset a lot of people over a 2-year period, but he ended up with a very young, ambitious, dynamic group of people who wanted to create great places to work. And personally, I always said to people, Martin was such a lovely man. He was a gifted clinician. He was a breast surgeon by trade. He was the president. He was